What's a big advantage? Tax deduction. Remember that. Interest expense is tax deductible. So it makes borrowing a very cheap source of funding. Does it make sense to you? It lowers your taxes. All you have to do is open the Word, file I posted, under topic 1, okay, for my day 1's lecture. And there you have that example. Okay, this is the reason why 99.9%, maybe 100% of US firms, they borrow money because interest expense is tax deductible. Okay, it lowers their taxes. So almost everybody borrows money. What's the trade-off involved? If there is something good, there must be something negative. A risk. It increases the risk for shareholders. So you have to be very cautious. If you are Facebook or Twitter or Google or Amazon, you want to be very careful, okay? You don't want to be rushing into, too much borrowing, over borrowing. Because yes, over borrowing will keep lowering your taxes, but at the same time you are increasing the risk, okay? And this increased risk will offset any benefit from increased borrowing. So there is a trade-off that we talked about. All right, next question. What is working capital? Current assets. Working capital is another name for current assets. So you create value by managing current assets, okay? Can anyone give me an example as to how you can create value by managing current assets? What are current assets? Can anyone tell me what the current assets are? Cash?
Accounts receivable.
Accounts receivable.
Inventory.
Inventory. So how do you create value by managing these assets, these accounts? Anyone?
Don't sit on too much cash.
Don't sit on too much cash, okay? If I'm sitting on, like I told you, Apple is sitting on $242 billion in cash.
You want to invest?
You want to invest it or return the money, return this to shareholders. How? By increased dividends, by buying back shares. Hey, we are going to buy back shares. So let shareholders do a better job of investing those funds for their benefit. If you can't, okay, I buy Apple shares. Why? Because I feel, hey, Apple has some great products in the pipeline. But if Apple says, sorry, the products in the pipeline are finite in number, then I would say, hey, return my cash to me, okay? Here, your shares, I'll buy back the shares, return all the capital to me. And I can, maybe invest in Amazon or I can invest in Google, okay? So this is important that managers don't sit on too much cash because they're destroying value. You see what I'm saying here? They're destroying value. Okay, give me another example of value creation through the management of current assets. Another example, can you think of another example pertaining to inventories, for example, or accounts receivable?
Don't have too much inventory.
Too much inventory. It doesn't do you any good. Over investments in inventory. Value destruction. You're destroying value. All right, so any questions on the first slide? So if I give you a quiz, you think you can handle the quiz? The same questions I've just, okay. Next is this slide we covered last time. I'm skipping the other ones. They're not, of course, I want to make sure, do you have any questions on the slides I skipped, for example, here? The second branch of finance, investment finance, where we teach you how to value stocks. What's the fair value of a share of Apple? Okay. Risk and return. We teach you how to manage a portfolio. Can anyone tell me what we mean by a portfolio? What is a portfolio?
Having your money in multiple places?
Yes, collection of assets. A portfolio is defined as a collection of assets. Your collection will be different than my collection. A collection of assets, okay? Like stocks, bonds, cash, real estate, gold, silver, oil, These are all different types of assets. Institutional finance, like you work for a bank, create value for your bank, create value for your bank's shareholders. Okay. Make investment decisions. Yes, banks lend money. That's how they create value. They give you 2% when you deposit your funds with your bank. They make these loans to area businesses at 6%. So they evaluate risk. Okay. If you're a high risk business, they will charge you a higher rate of return. That's how you create value. And finally, international finance. Any questions on any of the slides? Okay, so now we are here. So in this class, we are learning how to manage Facebook's funds, Apple's funds, corporate funds, business funds, small business, large business, doesn't matter. The underlying principles are the same. So what should our goal be? Previously, they used to teach us, yes, back in the 60s and the 70s, firms maximize profits. If you are a firm, if you're Facebook, your job is to maximize profits. So with the advent of finance, finance separated from economics, I believe it started separating from economics back in the 50s and the 60s, and then it became a full-blown, body of knowledge in the 60s and the 70s. So it's growing now, the body of knowledge. So we separated from economics. We were part of economics before. All business disciplines were part of economics. All right? So we in finance said, no, it doesn't look like we should maximize profits. Profit maximization should not be our goal. Okay? Tell me 3 reasons why. I listed 3 reasons on the board. I'm hoping that you all wrote down the 3 reasons or 3 reasons, 3 problems with profit maximization. Can you name those 3? Yes.
Cash flow, risk.
Ignores, yes. Profit maximization ignores cash flows. Ignores cash flows. And I gave you at least a couple of examples. Okay. Can you share with me the GM example I gave you? The GM example. In 1 year, did they not show higher profits, right? And how were they able to show higher profits? Does anyone remember? How was GM able to show higher profits in a given year? Higher than those expected. So what they did, they changed their depreciation expense. Okay? How? By assuming that the life of the assets was longer than what was used in previous calculations. In my example, hypothetically, I don't know the details of GM's case, but in my example, I said life is 3 years, then I changed the life to 5 years, and what happened? The depreciation expense, what happened to the depreciation expense? When I increased the life of the assets, expected life of the assets, what happened?
Decreased.
The depreciation expense decreased. And what was the impact on the profits? When an expense is decreased, what happens to your profits?
It increases.
Your profits go up. So they decreased. So did it have any impact on their cash flows?
No.
No, why not?
Because you still have to eventually.
Because depreciation, remember, is a non-cash expense. You can fiddle with it all your life. Okay, you can manipulate it all you like. It has no impact on your cash flows. Why?